Okay, Adam, thank you so very much for joining me this evening for you, where you're based in Seattle. I really appreciate it. I know it's probably getting quite late where you are. I came across your profile a little while ago, and I've been following your content, and someone out of the US is producing really great tips and tricks. So thank you so much for joining me. I guess I would love to hear a lot about yourself and your background, and of course, your advice from job searching strategies and the tech industry, and of course, your amazing consultation business.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go through a quick intro, um, and again, fire away with any questions if you've got them. I'm originally from Virginia. I moved out to Seattle in 2012. I did an undergraduate in mechanical engineering from Virginia Tech, and then I wanted to get out of VA, and I started looking for jobs on the West Coast. Got hired by Boeing, and the rest is kind of history. Most of my experience really in the last decade has been in a variety of engineering positions. So that's kind of my niche. Spent some time in design, doing mechanical design, working with equipment. I spent 3 4 years in automation, working with big industrial systems. Um, I have managed lots of different teams over the years, doing really interesting work. Was hired out of Boeing about 2 years ago into the tech industry. And now I work full time at Amazon during the day in a group called Global Health Technology. And that's been my first attempt in the software world full time, which has been a really fun learning experience for me. And it's been a great experience so far. But yeah, professionally, that's kind of how my career has shifted. I've been doing more and more tech work, I guess, really again over the last 10 years, but been a hiring manager for the last eight. And that's the bulk of what my side business or my coaching program is built around. It's everything from the perspective of a hiring manager, right? Not necessarily a career coach where, I'm an ex recruiter and I'm going to come in and I'm going to tell you how an ATS system works. What we try to do is help you get inside the mind of the people that are evaluating you to be hired. Um, but yeah, outside of work, um, I live in Seattle. I love doing really anything outside. I have an old rally car that I fixed up with my brother. We'll race that on the weekends if we get time. I like to say one and a half kids, which really just means I have a 2 year old and then I have another one that's about 7 months cooked and is due at the end of September. So we're really excited for that. Uh, and then outside of what I would call maybe hobbies or kids, um, maybe the only other thing that would be interesting to know is that I spent a fair amount of my time growing up in athletics. So I wrestled all the way through college, and I've been coaching on the side. It's the one other thing that I spend a lot of time doing is I love working with high school kids, and do a fair amount of coaching at different high schools in the area, trying to stay somewhat active, but that's hard with children, as I'm sure lots of people know. But that is me in a nutshell, if that's helpful.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's amazing. It's really good, to have a diverse background, and I think people quite often forget about the life outside of the laptop. Especially a lot of people working remotely or
Yeah.
online. We just literally focus on work, work, work. So yeah, it's really good to hear. I'd love to take a step back, and you've been or you are in the tech industry for probably a number of years now. And you've probably seen as a hiring manager the volume of applicants or even interest for tech increasing. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And more importantly, do you think that there is a skill shortage within this sector?
Mm, that's a great question. It's hard to say if in my experience that the volume of applications is increasing. I've been in the quote tech industry for about 2 years. I've been in the engineering industry for about 10. I'd say that the pandemic, and this is no surprise to anybody listening, the pandemic forced a lot of people to reconsider their career, and I'd say a healthy percentage considered software and computer science. And what we did see again, I'd say between February of 2020 to February of 2021, I think the numbers inside of entry level SDE, software development engineering, data analyst positions did increase, right? And that's just in talking with other hiring people across the industry, right? I have a fairly established network in LinkedIn, and stay fairly well connected with some of the other local tech companies. And yeah, saw a lot of folks going back to coding boot camp. They weren't at the office. They had some spare time on their hands. Folks going to those 3 to 6 month programs, getting Azure certified or cloud certified. And yeah, I'd say the lower levels, we did, I at least noticed some kind of an uptick. I wouldn't say that I noticed too much on the more experienced side. Again, once you get into the senior level, principal level positions, nothing crazy. But yeah, I'd say definitely some people reconsidering how to get into the tech industry in the
Mm,
last, let's call it 16 months, maybe 18 months for sure. Is there a skills
mm,
shortage? Yes and no. Um, that's a great question. Tech is such a broad term, right? I mean, you can be an executive administrator and work at Google and be quote in tech, right, with no technical ability or skill whatsoever, and that's okay, right? A lot of people come in to the tech industry that way, and then they upskill, and that's a totally legitimate way to make that kind of a transition. And in some cases, we coach people how to do that, but where's the skill shortage? I I think the obvious first answer would be software development engineering. There's definitely not enough SDEs in the tech space. Um, to keep up with the demand. And again, that's why you see really large entities, again, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, investing in these internal universities, right? Or certificate programs or upskilling, colleges to train up people in, non-tech skills to do tech work, to fill some of those lower level positions because there's just not enough people to hire. I'd say maybe the one other skill that there appears to be a shortage of, or at least something that I notice, is probably on the product side, and that could be technical or non-technical. But that terminology, product management, I'd say is a pretty competitive field right now. It's hard to get your hands on highly qualified product folks, and I'd say that, you know, large tech industries are willing to shell out a lot of money to get people that are high performers, especially somebody that's got a reputation associated with a well-established product, right? So Apple rolls out a new thing, you're the product manager of that, a lot of people might be headhunting you. So, you know,
yep, yeah.
outside of those two, maybe, but those are definitely the top two I think on my list.
Yeah. Yeah, great, great. And I guess maybe calling upon either your own personal coaching business or having worked in recruitment, how would one be able to stand out, especially within the tech industry or, in fact, any industry? I guess it's probably relevant to any sector. When you do have maybe something that's new or you're not maybe quite up to the speed that the company is requesting, but you really have a passion and interest, how do you make sure that you shine when you've literally got a LinkedIn and probably, a 2-page CV?
I mean, that's the question, right? That's the question. And
Don't
just to
grill you.
share, right? To share a little bit from my perspective, the average tech hiring manager is going to post a job for a position like a program manager, and you might get 1,000 applications. I might look at 2% of those applications, right? There's going to be a couple different buckets that applications actually show up from. It could be internal transitions, it could be referrals or recommendations, it could be you make it through the ATS system, or you're sourced, which is where somebody that works for me is going to go find you. Um, all that is to say is if 1,000 people apply, I might look at 30 to 40, maybe 50 in some extreme cases, PDF resumes. That's what's going to pop up in my email, and someone's going to say, "Hey, look through these and pick like 5." So that's absolutely the question you should be asking is you might be an incredible performer without the qualifications or without the, let's call it titles. Maybe you didn't go to the top school. Maybe you didn't get the best GPA, whatever it is. And I would tell you that, does that hurt you? No. If you went to Harvard, you're gonna pop off of a page, right? Like if you worked at Google, I'm definitely gonna notice that more frequently. But it doesn't really hurt you out the gate to not have that. Um, where the biggest differences are made in terms of standing out or being found, especially for people trying to transition into tech, is their ability to quantify the value they've created for a past employer, right? As a hiring manager and as a person that sat on hiring panels and hiring teams, like that's what we're trained to look for, right? You might have went to Harvard, but if you can't deliver anything, I don't care. That's the short version, right? I it's not that I don't love people and I don't care about your story. I do. But when I've got 1,000 applications that very desperately want to work for the company, the way I'm going through those and evaluating and sifting is going to be based off of value. And again, you might have come from Burger King and then you went to coding boot camp for 9 months. But if you have projects where again, you were able to take a product from X, to Y, and then that resulted in some sort of quantifiable, tangible benefit that you have data to support, that's everything, right? That's
Yeah,
what pops off the page. That's what gets you noticed. That's what gets you the interview calls. That what gets you through, all the different rounds. And um, that's what I
absolutely.
would just recommend, right? Think about what you're putting on that resume. Think about what you're putting on that cover letter that screams, I can
Yep.
create value.
Yeah, I really agree. In fact, we haven't even really met or discussed prior to this call, and it's exactly the same message that I'm preaching, and how, I guess, impressive CV
Hmm,
is successful, because I always get my clients to be having quantifiable metrics that showcases their unique selling proposition. So I think, if you really have, facts and figures, that's the hard, cold truth of what you've done, and that then has propelled that company forward. So yeah, I'm really glad that we're aligned. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this topic, but you did briefly touch on it, and it seems to be something that everyone stresses about, this applicant tracking software system.
hmm.
Is it, from your side, do you just really don't see the applicants if they don't have the right keywords, or it's just that they maybe, when you open up applications, that they're on, say, page 10 or 12 of your talent pool search board?
Gotcha. It's a good question, and unfortunately it's a depends answer. Um, when I worked at Boeing, Boeing was about 160,000 person company. And if I put out a job for a design engineering position, you might get 100 to 200 people that apply. I could go into the ATS and I could look at every single person. And when we say ATS, right, it's not this mythical, robotic, artificial intelligence thing. 95% of the time, it's literally exactly what the acronym is. It is an application tracking system, and it looks very similar to an Excel sheet, right? Your name, your application, and then a bunch of recruiters and sourcers and hiring managers are going through that and trying to filter out the important information. Um, again, 95% of the time, um, it's human beings looking at what you're submitting. That's the first thing that's going to look at what you submit. So hopefully that at least eliminates some confusion. Are there companies that use AI filters? Yes, that exists. Are there companies that weed out people based off of how they answer questions in an application? Yes, that's real. But like I would say, it's not some robot deciding your fate. It's usually a person. Um, that being said, again, at Boeing, I could see a lot more of the detail if I wanted to. I could go in and go, again, line by line, candidate by candidate. At a larger tech firm where there's potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of applications, I'd say very rarely does that ever happen because it's just too many people to go through, right? So there's recruiting teams doing that on my behalf, building lists of qualified people based off of conversations that we have in real life where I tell them in person, this is exactly what we want. Can you help me find it? So it just, again, it depends, but we try to make it as human as we possibly can.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think, so many people get caught up about it, the ATS, and what is it, and oh my God, I'm not going to pass it. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think if you've got like a strong USP, you've got your metrics, and you have proactively, looked at that job description, become natural that you'll be able to pass it by writing a tailored application. So yeah, thank you very much for the insights. I think, job searching, it's really like it's quite tedious process for people. It can become frustrating. I guess, what other types of things that you're coaching your clients and talking job seekers through to be able to enhance or maximize their opportunities?
Whew, loaded question. Um, The short answer is there's lots of stuff that we talk about. Uh, I think what I would tell people right now, just my general advice, if you're about to enter into a career transition or job search cycle, is just understand the reality of the situation first. The pandemic did some weird stuff to the job market. It made lots of jobs virtual. It made remote work a thing. It it made a lot of people reconsider their careers, and I would just say the number of applications for a given job rec has gone up significantly, right? Even outside of the tech space, there's a lot of people that want to transition. There's a lot of people going from a job that requires them to be in an office to one that does not. So it's competitive, is really the point I'm making. Uh, Give yourself lots of room for grace, and it's okay to fail. I would say that what a lot of job seekers don't do well, just in the maybe the 100 people that we worked with last year, is that they don't come up with a long-term seeking plan. I think a lot of people expect to find a job in, 4 to 6 weeks, like that's their target. And again, maybe you have the qualifications and the experience to do that, but even if you do, I would say, set a mental framework up so where you don't burn yourself out, right? You don't need to apply to 100 jobs in 3 days. And I mean that. I've literally worked with people that have been that aggressive. Like, I got to have 100 applications out in
Yeah.
72 hours, and that's crazy. Again, pick a couple target companies, pick a couple target jobs, spend the bulk of your time investing in building relationships with people that work there. Again, we can talk on and on about that, but I would say, again, be strategic to where you're not going to burn yourself out in the first 2 months, right? You're not going to overload on crushing rejection, which can happen. And
Mm.
I'd say prepare for the long haul, right? Prepare for a 4 to 6 months type of a time frame. And if you want to go get some help from a coach to try and shrink that down, then by all means. But that doesn't
Mm.
necessarily mean you have to. So
No, I think you're right, because it's disheartening and it flattens you, and you start to
mm,
question yourself if you get so many rejections. But really, it's probably because you weren't maybe focused and strategic, as you mentioned, and just willy nilly, as they say, just keep applying. So I
right,
think
the
it's
pray and spray method.
yeah, exactly. And I agree. So many of my clients have come to me saying, Trisha, I've applied for so many jobs and literally I've been ghosted. There's a black hole. There's nothing. What can I do? And
Mm,
that's the first thing that we discuss. Be strategic and really fine tune who you're trying to target. I read a post a little while ago that I'm really interested to hear, sort of on a deeper level. You touched on how we should be modernizing the job search process. Can you walk us through that?
yes, I can. Another good loaded question. Um, how should we be modernizing the job process or the job search process? I've posted a couple times, it feels like, in the last month on that topic. And more recently, I think even a couple days after that, I posted about, I wish that the job search process was like the Domino's pizza tracking app. And if you're not familiar with what Domino's pizza tracking is, go give it a quick Google search. Uh, the short version is that I think too many companies are so scared of the legal risks that providing more transparency creates, right? And if you go talk to the top companies in the most sought after jobs, again, the Googles and Facebooks and Microsofts of the world, what you'll hear from those hiring teams is that we don't, we're really, really careful to offer feedback because 90% of the people that are going to hear it are going to, one, disagree with it, and two, it's going to make them angry, right? So why would we say anything that does that? We'd rather just say nothing. And and I just feel like that is fundamentally a bad strategy. That, again, there's got to be smarter ways to give helpful feedback. Does it need to be, again, maybe it was a terrible interview, right? But you don't necessarily need to blow somebody's life up with the worst feedback they've ever heard. But something I fully believe is better than nothing. Um, and that's really probably the core of what I meant by modernizing the job search process. Is there's ways to be smart about offering helpful, constructive, value added feedback, even if it's not overly specific, to everybody. that, again, if you take the time to go through multiple interviews, to talk to hiring teams, you should get something. It shouldn't just be thank you for your time. You weren't a good fit. We've moved on, right? You've invested what, maybe multiple weeks, if not multiple months, trying to prepare for that. You should get something valuable back. And that's really the first issue that I think I have with a lot of the modern quote hiring processes, that those companies are afraid of the legal risk that feedback creates. And I just think that's a lame and weak excuse. I think we can do better. I think the
Mm,
applicants deserve better.
yeah, I agree. And by the way, it's not just a US issue. I think, in
Mm,
Dubai, Australia being, my home country, it's an international problem that it seems that the system is something that's being left behind. Now, there's no reason why uh, every applicant shouldn't hear back. Now, whether it's yes, but there shouldn't be such a black hole in terms of the job application process. We've got
right.
such robust technology these days. I mean, even the likes, I know this phrase, blockchain, you can literally trace everything through the block. And if these types of technologies were integrated or implemented in recruitment, I think it would benefit everyone. You've got hard evidence that it's visualized by someone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think we've got quite a long way to go in terms of the recruitment sector being positive for the job seeker.
Yeah, I think there's companies out there that are doing some things in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. It's not like the system is 100% broken everywhere, and it's also not like these companies are actively trying to, keep you in the dark. It's just that, again, it's this risk versus reward scenario, and I think, like you said, right, there's room for improvement.
Absolutely, and I know specifically in the UAE. I'll be honest, I don't know the US market very well, but you've got literally hundreds of applicants for every position going. You've got people from all parts of the world trying to get to Dubai, and then you've got people, the expats already living in Dubai. So the talent pool is just huge compared to other places. So I think definitely something needs to get going to be able to support the job seekers. But I wanted to ask you. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten now what else. Oh yeah, the US. So do you know any differences, or have you experienced? Are you seeing any applications for someone maybe who is outside of the US versus an internal applicant? Is there any differences that you're seeing in the way people are applying, or that they should be applying if they're
Mm.
trying to get to the US or close by?
Yeah, great question. I'd say that maybe a third of our clientele that come through our coaching or careers firm are international, and they're international with the objective of coming into most typically Canada or the US. Um, it's not a crazy shift, again, to go from a market like Dubai to a market like Canada. I'd say there's probably some fundamental differences in the way you do that, but again, value is the transcending feature, right? If you have value, you can win. Some of the biggest ones are cultural. Again, like, I think if it's clients from India versus clients from Europe versus clients from South America, some of the biggest roadblocks, or not roadblocks, but would be concerns, are cultural ones. Everything from, how you would introduce yourself to a person you're talking to, especially on LinkedIn. I think that's honestly one of the very first things we typically address is networking, and building relationships is such a big part of the process we use to help people find jobs. And if you're not comfortably able to make introductions and connections through a platform like LinkedIn, you can really struggle. Um, Again, like, what you might notice is that folks from other countries, they will not use somebody's name in the introduction, right? They will not say, "Hi, Adam." It'll be, "Dear sir," right? And of course, I'm a hiring manager getting 50 to 100 messages every couple of days. If it's not addressed to me, it's just another, piece of white noise information, and I'm going to skip right over it. So there's things you can do to, again, get somebody's attention, increase your likelihood of getting a response, starting a conversation. And that's a lot of what the, base level tactics we talk about actually are, is just some of those
Mm.
small cultural shifts.
No, yeah, absolutely agree, and I'm probably in the same boat as you. People reaching out quite frequently for jobs and help, but being so
Sure.
direct and saying, "Hi, ma'am, I need a job. Can you help me?" I think,
Yeah.
from where I come from, you would sort of want to build a relationship, or at least get to know you before you ask for something that you want. Yeah, it's funny that we have the same sort of issues on a global scale that we're facing. And you're right, it's a cultural thing. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's just they're being polite by saying hi, ma'am, whereas we're addressing, for me, I would address someone by their first name. So yeah. I guess I would just like to maybe say in closing, I think, first of all, you've given some amazing tips, really great insights. Is there anything that you would suggest in terms of how to build relationships with people rather than relying on the job board, considering now that we're just, heavily into a digital age at the minute?
Yeah. Um, there's so much that could be said there. I think one of the things that I would just universally recommend, this is true for students, this is true for tenured professionals and people in mid-career, it's really true for anybody, is don't wait until you need to make a career transition or look for a new job to network. Um, I think networking also most of the time has a bad connotation. Again, thinking about a platform like LinkedIn, right, where networking means, I'm sending somebody a direct message asking for a referral, or trying to get my foot in the door, and that's really not networking. That's job seeking. There's a difference. Um, Networking, and this is again how we would coach it, is you want to establish value added transactional relationships. And the best way to do that is outside of directly seeking a job, right? Comment on people's posts, interact with folks on different platforms, go to, go to different networking events. There's tons of them all around the world, right? In cities like Seattle, there's conferences. Meet people. That's the short version, is build real relationships, not ones that are platformed or founded by the need for a job, and those relationships are going to turn into advocates, right? It's very different if somebody just is blindly pushing the referral button, they have no idea who you are, versus somebody that's actually advocating for you. Those are vastly
Mm.
different things, and again, one is way more effective than the other. So that all starts whenever you want it to start, and I would not wait for the need to have a job filled to do that, right? You can do that all the time. And especially with
Mm.
the internet, you can do it with people like me, even the fact, we're 6,000 miles apart from each other. So you can make
Absolutely,
it happen.
absolutely. No, I agree with you, and you sort of hit the nail on the head in terms of the different platforms. For example, I know, like Twitter, you've got people different opinions, whether it's a political view that they would never represent themselves on LinkedIn, or vice versa. But then you really, you get to know the other side of someone, and you might be able to spark a conversation from something else that you've read on another medium. So yeah, I think it's, and you, again, you raise a great point that networking is different to just like trying to get a job. It's sort of, there's more meaning behind it. So thank you
Absolutely.
very much. I would love to know, in closing or in final thoughts and comments, how or what services do you offer? How can my audience reach out to you if they would like to work with you, if that's an option, and how can people contact you?
Yeah, I'm usually pretty responsive on LinkedIn, although, like I said, I get a lot of messages and sometimes it's hard to get back to every single one. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way is you can go through our coaching website. It's brodacoaching.com. You can find it on my LinkedIn platform or my profile page. But if you go in and request a meeting or a consultation, you can. I mean, those emails come directly to me, and I read all of those. So yeah, again, you can reach out through LinkedIn and just we can try to connect that way. That's definitely the easiest. But if you absolutely want to get in touch or hear more about our coaching services, I'd say use our website, and a lot of the information in terms of what we offer is more thoroughly described there. In short, we do resumes, we do very, very in-depth interview prep, and then probably the bulk of the service or the folks that we work with, I would say we specialize in helping non-technical folks transition into technical industries. Doesn't necessarily mean technical jobs, it means the technical industry. And we have packages and services that help you do that from a variety of perspectives.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time this evening for you. You are
Yeah.
absolutely most welcome to come back. I would love to do another show with you, and we can maybe touch on a couple of other in-depth topics. And of course, maybe I can ask the audience what they would love to hear from you. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having
Thank
me,
you.
and take care.